Nope. Boys and girls of every age, would you like to see something strange? Come with us and you will see this our town of Halloween. This is Halloween, this is Halloween. I am the who when you call who's there. I am the wind blowing through your hair. I am the shadow on the moon at night, filling your dreams to the brim with fright. I've never even seen that movie. I was not allowed to watch it when I was a kid. The reason I know that song is because it used to come on Disney Channel a lot by itself. And the little spliced in music videos, you know, between shows or during commercial breaks, it used to come on a lot, and that's why I know the song. And I know the Oogie Boogie song because it came on a lot of top 10 villain songs lists when I was a kid. There'd be like top 10 Disney villain songs. Number 4, Friends on the Other Side. Number 3, Oogie Boogie song, etc. I'm filming this at night to make it more spooky, but it also has an impact on the lighting. Oopsie. Good news! The people who grew up watching the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie in 2003 are now old enough to speak on its behalf. I'm painting my nails right now, just give me a second. I already had them painted, but they got a little bit chipped before I could make the video, so I'm gonna kind of tidy them up a little bit. I should pause the recording, but that would require moving my hand from where it— oh, doggone it! Did I already mess up my polish? Well, yes I did. Yes, I did. Breaking news, my dad got me a pop figure of Alexander Hamilton as seen in the musical Hamilton. He's here now, he's hanging out with us, that's fun. Also breaking news, the people who grew up watching the Eddie Murphy 2003 version of The Haunted Mansion are now old enough to make videos about it. Oh, you've got your Nostalgia Critic Disney-cember short reviews of The Haunted Mansion, unless he did a more recent, longer review of The Haunted Mansion. Again, I don't really watch the Nostalgia Critic anymore. You've got your Yesterworlds casually bringing up The Haunted Mansion in terms of like the ride and being like, by the way, the movie sucked, moving on. But this is not that. Now I know what you're thinking going into this. Oh, you've made a point of mentioning that you grew up watching this movie, so I assume you've got some kind of nostalgia filter making you like this movie more than you otherwise would. To which I would answer, I don't know, maybe.
Does anybody want a cookie?
First of all, that just kind of means that it engaged with its target audience. And second of all, as if most of the movies that were made in the 70s and 80s aren't only considered classics because people liked them when they were kids and are now old enough to make them popular. I've watched many YouTube videos in my time made by older people who have disliked the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie. When I was a kid, I thought that the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie was fine. And then as I grew up, I started watching YouTube videos in which older people said that they hated the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie and just kind of discussed it as though it was just understood to be bad. And anyway, we all know how bad the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie was. And as a result of that, my reaction was, actually, the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie is awesome. And now, having rewatched it in preparation for this video, I'm back to it's fine. This video is going to be partially a how I would rewrite video because I like the movie, but while I watched it, I kept sitting there thinking, oh, if they had just kind of moved that around and like kind of tweaked that a little bit, I feel like I would have been able to say that I love the movie and like really stick it to those, you know, your Nostalgia Critics and your Yesterworlds. No offense, Yesterworld, you make great videos. It's just like a few casual mentions of like, by the way, I hate the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie, and like, okay, Yesterworld. Seriously though, I cannot get over how many elements of the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie I really liked but did not feel were fully realized. When I was a kid watching the movie, I basically did not care about any of the scenes that contained only adults. I didn't care about Eddie Murphy's character's marriage, and by the way, that character is going to be called Eddie Murphy the whole time. I didn't care about what Rich Ghost was talking to Sarah about. By the way, he's going to be called Rich Ghost the whole time. I was all about those kid scenes, like get Megan and Michael on that screen. So naturally, when I went to rewatch the movie, I was thinking, oh, I'll bet this time I'm going to be way more focused on, you know, the adult scenes, the yandere subplot with Rich Ghost and Sarah. I'm going to be way more focused on that than I'm going to be on those like kid scenes. I was wrong. The kid scenes are still kind of the best ones in my opinion. You have to have like a tolerance for child acting, which I do have. I'll watch reviews on movies and they'll be like, oh, the child acting is agonizing. And I'm just like, well, I do notice that they're children and that their acting is affected by the fact that they're children, but it doesn't bother me. Usually, if they're like horribly stilted, then it will take me out of it, but a lot of it I'm able to chalk up to, well, kids do talk weird, right? Kids do, they talk weird. When you have a conversation with a kid, they'll be talking weird in real life. I feel like just in general, the distribution and quality of scenes in the movie could take some alterations, but that's gonna be discussed later. I'm gonna do a breakdown of the characters, then I'm gonna do a breakdown of the plot, and then I'm gonna do the how I would rewrite section. So first character, we've got Eddie Murphy.
I'm Jim Evers of Evers and Evers Real Estate.
He's a workaholic dad. It's kind of like those other movies where Eddie Murphy is a workaholic dad. It's most similar, I think, to his character in Imagine That, but I feel like there's more charisma on his part in this movie than in Imagine That. It could be because his job in this movie is more kind of customer servicey almost, so seeing his comedic strained smile in that context is more personable to me than seeing him exemplify that same strained politeness in more of a corporate boardroom setting. Also, here the plot for his character is that he's trying to be a good dad and husband, but then the temptation of his workaholic nature is thrown into his path and he succumbs to that temptation, and it's very much, oh, I wanted to, but it's more of that structure. Whereas in Imagine That, it does immediately go into it like he's a workaholic corporate dad who cares about his daughter, but in the context of he wants her to act normal and stop being so weird. And was that character autistic coded?
So this is why I was called out of work, because my daughter's sitting by herself at recess?
No, her class went inside 45 minutes ago. She's still sitting here because Kupida and Mapida told her to. Kupida and Mapida are
Yeah, I
her...
know. Imaginary friends.
And he only starts taking a more active interest in his daughter's mind and life when he realizes that her maybe psychic powers are able to help him out in the work setting. So in Imagine That, even when I see his character getting closer to his daughter, I'm aware that he has the ulterior motive of getting rich off of her maybe psychic powers. That being said, Imagine That was very quotable and fun when I was a kid. I did enjoy Imagine That quite a bit. In this movie, he's actively trying to choose family stuff over work stuff. Oh, hey, cat. Oh, that's cute. Sorry, my cat she just crawled out from under the bed. I didn't even know she was down there. Anyway, in this movie, he was trying to choose family stuff over work stuff, but then wouldn't you know it, work stuff threw itself into his path and he couldn't resist. In Imagine That, he is pursuing work stuff the whole time until the very end where he's like, maybe family, question mark? Let me go to her little recital. Meanwhile, in Daddy Daycare, the work and the family thing don't even really come into conflict too much. Like, there's a point where he stops doing the daycare and instead goes back to work in the office and stuff, but that's not really him choosing work over his family. That's just like the circumstances changed and like it seemed like the best move at the time, but then he went back to the daycare and everyone was happy. On the Eddie Murphy character workaholic dad spectrum, there's Daddy Daycare on one end where he's like almost completely likable, and there's Imagine That on the other end where honestly he's still pretty likable, but Haunted Mansion falls in between Daddy Daycare and Imagine That. More on the side of Imagine That than on the side of Daddy Daycare. Shout out to my girl Zapata and Zapata's Dragon.
Zapata's dragon, please let me pass. Zapata's dragon.
You gotta do better than that.
Zapata's dragon, please let me pass.
Of course, that's not to leave out Kupida and Mapida, and who can forget Quali? I remember that movie really well, I just don't know what Eddie Murphy's job was. I guess he was like trading stocks? Trading stocks, right? Trading stocks? Because at some point the character who's like, his whole thing is that he appears to be white, but he's really leaning heavily on Native American heritage, I guess was his gimmick. Wow, weird movie. Yeah, but that character at one point was like, I think you're insider trading. And Eddie Murphy's character was like, I'm not insider trading. I'm just relying on the innate power of my psychic daughter with her magic blanket. I feel like since this movie is a Disney theme park ride adaptation, he was supposed to be the Jack Sparrow type character. Like he was supposed to be the one who was really carrying this with his, charm and comedy and stuff.
At Evers and Evers, we want you to be happy for Evers and Evers. And please accept this waterproof calendar as a token of our appreciation.
He's the funny guy who's the main draw. The thing is, though, Jack Sparrow is a character. They made particular characterization choices and did specific writing things, like he was a character. For Eddie Murphy's character in the Haunted Mansion, it feels like they just kind of said, let's get Eddie Murphy and have him be funny. The character is kind of secondary to that, where mostly he has an arc, but he doesn't have a character that is innately distinct from just Eddie Murphy's comedic style. Like he could be a stand-up routine. It's more in line with what they did with comedians in the wake of Robin Williams as the genie in their animated movies. Hey, Robin Williams' genie did well, so let's get a comedian as a side character and have him do his comedy for like the duration. Eddie Murphy as Mushu in Mulan, or the Gargoyles in Hunchback, or Phil in Hercules, and I guess Turk from Tarzan, huh? Just get a funny person and let him kind of riff. But that's for side characters is the thing. Like the genie was a supporting character, Mushu is a supporting character, and Jack Sparrow for that matter is also a supporting character in the first movie. So instead of following Pirates of the Caribbean's example example in getting an entertaining actor to portray a distinct character, and instead of following the examples of the animated canon where you get a comedian and let him kind of riff as a side character, they just sort of half did all of those concepts. Narratively, there were other options that weren't used, and those options, had they been used, might have elevated the experience in some ways. But again, Eddie Murphy's fun. It was fun to watch him. I wouldn't know so much about Imagine That if I didn't enjoy watching Eddie Murphy riff on screen. So that was one character. There's the Eddie Murphy character. I had a lot to say about him. Second character, there is Sarah, who is Eddie Murphy's character's wife.
Yes, I'm Sarah.
She has kind of a stilted delivery style also, I found. It could have just been an acting choice. I'm not gonna sit here and say it was bad acting. I just was conscious of her delivery in ways that I am not always conscious of actors' delivery. But yeah, Sarah isn't doing too terribly much heavy lifting as far as story is concerned. I feel like it might be a little mean to invoke the sexy lamp trope, but she did have a lot of like that going on. I don't know. What I'm not saying is that she didn't have a personality. There were those little moments where her like knowledge of specialized fields was made clear. She's talking to Rich Ghost and she's like, oh man, I appreciate the architecture of this building. Can we kind of talk about that while I passively entice you with my knowledge about architecture?
The Italian influence, the Renaissance style of the molding, the attention to detail is stunning. You never see houses like this, or at least I don't.
Great care and love went into the building of this mansion.
But even as someone going into the movie looking to kind of enjoy the subplot of Yandere Ghost and Sarah, a lot of her selfhood was sort of filtered through the lens of being Eddie Murphy's wife and being the kid's mother. Like, she didn't get a lot of a self, in my opinion. I guess the way I would put it is I didn't feel as an audience member like there was much opportunity to climb inside her head and get what she's thinking other than I'm scared and I'm angry. Like it felt very simplistic in my opinion. There's the kids of Eddie Murphy and Sarah who are Michael and Megan. Michael is a fraidy cat younger brother who is also very sensible, so he's not just the coward, he also has his moments of like, nope, I'm not gonna do that, that's pretty stupid. And we have Megan, who is the more adventurous older sister who has her little quips, and she knows Latin. So that's fun, she knows Latin. Other than that, there is Rich Ghost, Butler Ghost, Maid Ghost, and Inconceivable Ghost.
You're not supposed to be up here. This is unspeakable. Unspeakable. You have to leave.
Who is that?
And Elizabeth, who is dead, but like more dead than the other ones, because she doesn't get to be a person ghost, she's just like a little orb. Now for the plot. The movie starts and you have opening credits, and the whole time I watched the opening credits, I was like, oh, it's like the Peppers ghost, like in the Haunted Mansion ride that I've never ridden. I just watch a lot of videos on it. You see a bunch of ghosts ballroom dancing, basically hearkening to the plot that we're gonna learn later. Then we see a little bicycle kid with a bunch of flyers, and he goes to the Haunted Mansion. He kind of pedals up to the gate on his little bicycle, and he looks through the gate and he stares at it for a really long time, and then a ghost pops out like, I'm here to scare you, and then the kid's like, oh no, I'm scared, and he pedals away, leaving behind a bunch of flyers. The flyers are for the real estate company owned by Eddie Murphy and his wife. The camera kind of zooms in on Eddie Murphy's smiling face, and then it transitions to him actually smiling in a house that he's trying to sell to some people. And when I was a kid, I was like, ooh, that was very cool. It went to the paper and then it was him. He's selling the house, and there's a little moment where Sarah calls like, hey, by the way, it's our anniversary, don't miss it. And there's also a little gimmick on the call where he's pretending that she's another buyer, so he's just like, hello? Yes, this house is still available, to kind of, you know, get the people who are in the house with him to want to buy it because they think, oh no, someone else wants it, I gotta buy it. And Sarah on the other end is kind of just ignoring the fact that he's doing this, which I found kind of cute because it's like, oh, he does this a lot, and she's just kind of taking it in stride, like, okay, he's gonna use this phone call to try to haggle with these guys, that's fine. I'm gonna talk about the thing I want to talk about, which is how he shouldn't miss the dinner for our anniversary. And obviously we gotta lay some groundwork establishing that he's a workaholic dad Eddie Murphy character, so he's gonna go ahead and miss that dinner. He misses the dinner because he's talking with this couple to get them to sign for the house. They sign for the house, and as he's on his way out, this other couple is like, hey, did you say that you're selling a house? Because we want to sell a house. And he's like, doggone it, now I gotta do business. And you know, he ends up late because he's talking with these guys, which I'm intrigued by the couple who is sitting and eating at a little bar and goes, wait a minute, did I just hear that guy is a real estate agent? That stranger over there is a real estate agent? We gotta sell our house right now. We gotta set it up right now. Like, guys, This is 2003. The internet exists. Look up real estate agencies. What are you guys here for? Eddie Murphy gets home, apologizes to the wife, gives her a watch and a teddy bear. Michael runs in like, I'm scared of spiders, in a scene that I can pretty much recite because when I was a kid, I loved that scene because it's one of the kids' scenes. I can't crush it. I can't whack it. I can't. And then Megan walks in and she's like, phew. There, happy, and Eddie Murphy's character is like, no, I'm not happy, Megan. I was trying to make a point to your brother about the importance of whacking your own spiders. And she's like, whatever. Wasn't even jokes, I was just reciting the scene. Meanwhile, downstairs, Sarah's on the phone with the Haunted Mansion people because they've seen the flyer, they've seen her face, and they're like, wait a minute, we're gonna call her. Hey, Sarah, why don't you come over here and sell our house? And Sarah's like, no, actually, Eddie Murphy just promised me that he's gonna take me out to the lake with the family because he's sorry about missing our anniversary. So we have an important family trip, so I can't sell your house right now. Eddie Murphy has just come downstairs and he's like, wait, what are you talking about? And she's like, this group of people want me to sell their mansion. And he's like, wait, no, I want to sell their mansion because that sounds like work. And I'm a workaholic Eddie Murphy dad. The plan is, okay, on our way to the lake, we'll just stop by the mansion, talk to the mansion people, and then we'll leave and go to the lake. So they go to the mansion. They notice there's a cemetery outside the mansion, and Megan's like, oh my gosh, dead people? Eddie Murphy has the line, you know, honey, there's dead people in the backyard, but he delivers it like, you know, honey, there's dead people in the backyard, as though there's a different yard one would expect there to be dead people in. The main characters are allowed into the mansion, they walk in, the kids have a line that has haunted my entire life. Megan is like, it smells like grandma's house in here, and Michael's like, worse, it smells like grandma. And every time I watched that movie as a kid, my mom was like, that's a horrible thing to say. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's not nice to say that. It was an unnecessary exchange, to be sure. And then Butler Ghost comes down, and he's old, and he's really performing that. He's like, I'm the old Butler character. I will be talking like this the whole time. And it's like, you know what? You do you, Ramsley. I believe his name is Ramsley. I do kind of know the characters' names, and I know that Rich Ghost's name is Master Gracie. It's more expedient to say it the way I've been saying it. So they're in the mansion and Butler Ghost shows up and he's like, well, anyway, you guys are going to be having dinner with Rich Ghost now, so chop chop. And they're like, well, we were kind of just stopping by on the way to the lake. We weren't really planning on doing a whole thing. And he's like, anyway, to dinner now. And they're like, okay. So they go to dinner with Rich Ghost, and Rich Ghost is making no attempts to act like a normal person, but also neither is Eddie Murphy.
And this is our daughter Megan and our son Michael.
You have very beautiful children, Miss Emerson.
I kicked in some chromosomes too.
And Sarah's just like, oh man, I love the architecture here. It's so classic, and it must have been like such hard work. And Rich Ghost is like, yeah, my grandfather made it and he valued it very deeply. They're clearly hitting it off. It's a very flirty dinner with Rich Ghost. And Eddie Murphy's character's like, you guys have bathrooms? Eddie Murphy's character is riffing over there because for some reason he still thinks that that's what his wife is looking for. Like, his wife is so clearly hitting it off with Rich Ghost because he's engaging with her intellectually, and Eddie Murphy guy is like, I know what you need. You need me to tell you some jokes. It's nice to make her laugh, but maybe be earnest a little bit sometimes. Butler Ghost is standing at the window, and he's like, the storm has swollen the river. The storm has flooded the road. So basically, they have to stay overnight because weather. And when I rewatched the movie, I was like, wait, can they control the weather? What's the nature of the power they have? There's a lot of ways that it could fall into their power to make a flood, so it's not that big a deal. Or maybe they just made the active choice to schedule this on a day when they knew that the storm was going to flood the river. Either one of those works. That could be why they couldn't reschedule. They got one room for both kids and one room for the adults because that's, you know, that's the guest room situation that they worked out. Eddie Murphy and Sarah have an argument because Sarah is like, we were supposed to be at the lake, you're the one who wanted to do this little mansion tour, and now we're stuck here. And Eddie Murphy is like, I got you a watch, so you have to be okay with everything I do. And she's like, okay, I'm leaving. And he's like, wait, no, I'm sorry. And then Butler Ghost suddenly appears in the room, and Eddie Murphy's like, God, I'm startled. And Butler Ghost goes, anyway, my boss wants to talk to you. Come into this room with me. And Eddie Murphy follows him, and he doesn't meet the boss there because it was just to get him out of the way. Actually, Butler Ghost goes ahead and gets Sarah after this, and he's like, hey, my boss wants to talk to you. Come with me. And she actually does meet Rich Ghost because Rich Ghost is kind of hitting on Sarah, if you remember. Eddie Murphy, for some reason, in someone else's house, feels at liberty to just start messing with stuff to the extent that he finds a little trap door in the fireplace and wanders into it and ends up lost. We're to believe that it was intentional that he get lost in the haunted mansion, but still, he's taking a lot of liberties for this not to be his house. Like, goodness, when I was a kid, I would get in trouble for sitting on someone's couch uninvited. For some reason, he reached adulthood with a degree of entitledness that lets him find secret doors. Meanwhile, in the kids' room, this glowing orb appears that seems to be leading them in a certain direction, so they're like, hey, let's follow the orb, or at least Megan wants to follow the orb. Michael's like, let's not follow the orb. We don't know this orb. Why are we following the orb? And Megan's like, hey, where's your sense of adventure? And that's not a satisfactory response to what Michael said, but fine, we're following the orb now. So they follow the orb into like the back rooms of the mansion. They run into Maid Ghost and Inconceivable Ghost. They overhear Ramsley being evil.
The children she wasn't supposed to bring, along with that brainless husband of hers.
Eddie Murphy's wandering the mansion, generating fan service just by encountering things that actually exist in the ride. He passes by some portraits that change after he walks by, and he sees, I assume, a hallway that lengthens probably. They probably have that in the movie, right? Basically, he sees a bunch of stuff that's in the ride. He runs into Madame Leota, who is a head in a crystal ball. They call her the GY word a lot. He sits down with Madame Leota, and Madame Leota is like, I'm gonna scare you for no reason. And then she does. And he runs out of the room chased by musical instruments. It doesn't make more sense in context. Sarah is just having a leisurely walk with Rich Ghost and casually talking with him in the scenes that bored me the most when I was a kid. And in the course of all of this, all of the main characters learned the backstory gradually. Rich Ghost was in love with a woman named Elizabeth, who was black. Rich Ghost is white. Rich Ghost really wanted to, get married, be in love with Elizabeth, etc. But one day, Elizabeth committed suicide, and Rich Ghost, it broke his heart, and now all of the ghosts are haunting the mansion, and they're trapped in the mansion because of that, because of the curse of Elizabeth's death, basically. Sarah happens to look just like Elizabeth, so when they saw the flyers earlier, they're like, wait a minute, that's Elizabeth, so what we need to do is go ahead and hook Elizabeth up with Rich Ghost, and then everything will be good again. Eddie Murphy eventually finds where the kids are with the servant ghosts. There's some fun little dialogue there. I enjoy the fact that he's like, oh, we must be hallucinating, it must be the chicken, and Maid Ghost is like, hey, it's not the chicken, because presumably she made the chicken. I just find that very cute. In the course of Eddie Murphy being like, we gotta get out of here, kids, the kids are like, no, we gotta actually stay because mom's in danger because of the thing we just learned about the ghosts. This is where he's learning the backstory from them. And during this conversation, he mentions that he ran into the crystal ball with Madame Leota, and Maid Ghost is like, wait, you ran into Madame Leota? So they go back to Madame Leota because apparently she can do prophecies and just kind of decided to instead scare him. It's funny, she was mischievous only in that one scene where Eddie Murphy ran into her. Eddie Murphy ran into her, she decided, I'm gonna spook the crap out of this guy. And then she never seems like that ever again. Like, she's never really doing all that anymore. So they go back to Madame Leota, and she's like, here's what you need to do to solve the problem. You gotta find a key in a mausoleum. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna find that key in that mausoleum. So they ride a ghost carriage, and there's a little scene where some ghosts are like, he can't see me. What? Yeah, he can. No, he can't see me. It was whatever. And then they run into some like little statue heads that are like, we are going to sing everything that you ask us about. They're asking these statue heads for directions, but the statue heads straight up do not care. They're doing their own thing. Megan finds where the mausoleum is. They get to the mausoleum. Probably the scariest scene in the movie happens. It was comfortable scary. I'm pretty sure this one didn't keep me up at night at all. Now, Oompa Loompas on the other hand, Oompa Loompas. The subway scene from The Wiz, yeah, that one wrecked me pretty bad for a while. Basically, they go into the mausoleum and they're like, we gotta find the key, time to open some tombs. The little corpses in the boxes come to life. They start, trying to grab them and stuff. There's just like a pool of sitting water in the mausoleum that looks gross, and Megan has to like absolutely go into it. And she has a line before that where it's like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, yeah, I feel you. That looks like it would be pretty gross. She gets the key. She comes out. They get to the door to exit the mausoleum. Michael has stayed outside this whole time because Michael's the fraidy cat. When they get to the door to exit, it suddenly slams shut because the narrative is cheating them. And then also it's suddenly covered in spiders. And I feel like if the mansion has a mind of its own to manifest one's worst fears or make things worse, it feels really mean to the main characters to make these things happen to them. But again, it's the haunted mansion, so you kind of accept it. They have the key, they go back in the mansion to talk to Madame Leota, and Madame Leota's like, okay, now you gotta get to the trunk, and Eddie Murphy's like, now there's a trunk? But yeah, they find the trunk, they unlock the trunk. Inside the trunk, they find Elizabeth's letter that's like, by the way, I didn't kill myself, Ramsley did. It's not what she said. She actually just said, I love you, and I'll never kill myself, or something like that. Basically, it's made clear that Elizabeth did not actually take her own life. What happened was Ramsley poisoned her because he didn't like that she was black, pretty much. He was basically just like, no, you're black, you can't marry my boss. And so she died. Ramsley shows up like, oh well, I guess you found out. Oh no. Whatever will I do? You found out my little secret. Anyway, I'm going to have your wife marry my boss now, so. Eddie Murphy says the stupidest possible thing, which is, how's that even gonna work? He's dead and she's alive. And then Butler Ghost obviously is just like, okay, I mean, that's not that much of a problem if I also kill her. And Eddie Murphy's like, no, don't kill her. Like, dude, what did you think? Why would you say that? There's no way your plan would work. Your plan seems to be contingent on my wife not being alive. And there's no way to do that. The kids are kidnapped by the butler and locked up in a trunk, and Eddie Murphy is just kind of thrown out the window, and he tries to get back in, but the mansion's locked. After that, he just kind of hangs out outside the mansion like, oh well, I lost. Sarah, having now realized from the dialogue earlier that Rich Ghost wants to marry her, and like she's creeped out by that, obviously. She's like, man, this guy's delusional, he's trying to marry me. She runs to Butler Ghost like, hey, help, your boss wants me to marry him. This is wild. And Butler Ghost is like, yeah, it is wild. You're gonna do it though, because I went ahead and captured your kids in this trunk over here. And she's like, oh no, guess I gotta marry him now because you're holding my kids hostage. And he's like, yeah, that's basically the dynamic here. So she puts on the wedding dress, she goes to do the wedding. Meanwhile, Eddie Murphy is still outside. He's sitting in his car and he's just crying like, I've chosen to accept that my wife is gonna marry a ghost, my kids are gonna be locked in a trunk, and she's gonna get killed. Making no further efforts, he's just sitting there like, oh, I'm sad. It's so sad this is happening. If only there was something I could do, but there's not. Madame Leota, her crystal ball is just sitting in his passenger seat. She's like, hey, how about you do something? And he's like, wait, yeah, how about I do something? And he drives the car at the mansion to get inside. Earlier, it was foreshadowed that he really values his car because he was like, hey, the car is very expensive, don't slam the door really hard. So that's, you know, this is a character moment for him that he's willing to destroy his car to get inside the mansion and save his kids and wife. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it should be a hard choice, but I mean, it's great that he did it. The kids are now free from the trunk. Eddie Murphy and the kids crash the wedding. Rich Ghost is like, hey, how dare you? This is my almost wife. This is my girl over here. And Sarah's like, actually, seeing now that my kids are free from the trunk, I was just faking being happy about the wedding. I'm actually not Elizabeth. Eddie Murphy shows Rich Ghost Elizabeth's letter saying like, hey, I didn't kill myself, basically. This exposes that the butler did it, and he's like, wait a minute, you killed Elizabeth? The letter is written in her handwriting, so you must have done that. Butler Ghost says, now D-word you all to H-word. He exhibits more power than I think he should have. Like, there's a little fiery thing that he does some magic. Butler Ghost is defeated. Sarah suddenly topples over because she's been poisoned already because, like I mentioned earlier, Butler Ghost planned to kill her for ghost reasons. So she topples over like, oh no, I've been poisoned. Ah, you've been poisoned. Oh, the pain is unbearable. So everyone gets some time to stress out about the fact that Sarah looks like she's gonna die. But then the ghost ball comes back, the little glowing orb the kids were following earlier, and ghost orb goes towards Sarah. And Eddie Murphy's like, hey, stop that. The kids are like, no, we can vouch for it. It led us into danger, kind of. We can vouch for the ghost orb. Let it do whatever to mom. Ghost orb vanishes into Sarah, and she leaps up, and now she's Elizabeth, and she's like, hey, my love, it's me, Elizabeth. She talks to Rich Ghost, and they kiss, and Eddie Murphy's like, hey, that's still my wife's body. It's kind of messed up that you're puppeting my wife's body and also kissing it. That's, like, not really cool. Elizabeth's like, oh, no, you're right. That was uncool of me. I'm sorry. She leaves Elizabeth. Elizabeth's alive now. I'm not sure why being possessed by a ghost negates the effects of poison, but it does. So Elizabeth's soul is free because Ramsley was defeated or because the truth was learned about the nature of her death. Sarah is alive. Rich Ghost gives the deed to the mansion to Eddie Murphy, like, do what you want with it. You could live in it, you could sell it, whatever, do your thing. All of the servant ghosts are like, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to heaven, and all the ghosts go to heaven. The mansion is no longer haunted. End of the movie, we see Eddie Murphy and the family driving off with a bunch of little relics from the mansion kind of strapped to their car. That's the end of the movie. So here's how how I would rewrite it. The child scenes were perfect when I was a kid, and they're perfect now. I wouldn't change anything about it. They're having their little adventure. They're, meeting the waitstaff. They're getting cookies from the waitstaff, making friends with the ghost ball, overhearing the butler being sinister. We love it. We're keeping it. The Eddie Murphy scenes are fine. They give us most of the fan service in the movie as far as the ride goes. Oh, Eddie Murphy walking through things from the ride. Some of the backstory in the movie is some of the backstory for the Haunted Mansion ride. The main change I would make is Eddie Murphy shouldn't be the main protagonist. I think I would enjoy him more in this movie as a helpless, hapless, flawed supporting character. Same characterization, same acting, just not quite the same degree of character focus. The exploring of the mansion will be what the dad and kids are doing as their side plot. The main plot will be taken up by Sarah, who is now the main character of the story. Let me preface this by saying I'm not just doing The Invitation 2022 and calling it The Haunted Mansion 2003. I would never do that. You can trust me, I wouldn't do that. And I know what you're thinking. The Amity Elf. Did you really just stretch that hard to find narrative justification for making the yandere character archetype the central theme of a piece of media that didn't center it as heavily before? No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I meant all that stuff I said, and I genuinely think that the changes I'm proposing would make the story better. This is now the story of Sarah, who has a goofy, work-focused, but well-intentioned husband, played by Eddie Murphy. They have 2 precocious children who don't say the line about the house smelling like old people because it wasn't funny anyway, and my gosh, that line ruined my life. We make more time for Sarah to be the protagonist by essentially clipping away any scene that didn't provide enough ride fan service to justify existing, and also didn't make me laugh. This is how I would rewrite The Haunted Mansion, okay? This is for me. So we're keeping the singing heads because I liked those, and when I was a kid I had that scene memorized. We're getting rid of the ghosts popping into the carriage and being like, he can see me, no he can't see me, etc. We're getting rid of that guy. Also, in my version of the movie, they don't say the GY word anymore because we know better than that. Essentially, the movie would start the same, and we would still transition to Eddie Murphy through the flyer. I contemplated transitioning to Sarah instead, since Sarah's the main character now, but I feel like transitioning to Eddie Murphy does a better job of making a red herring of like, oh, we're transitioning to him through the flyer, so don't even think about the fact that Sarah's picture's on that flyer, don't even worry about it. Whereas her picture being on the flyer is the inciting event, pretty much. Inciting incident, whatever. So we do start with Eddie Murphy in the house, but when Sarah calls him, instead of just kind of hearing her voice over the phone, we are actually going to cut to where she is and see her talking to him. Once we see Eddie Murphy close the deal in the house, not at the dinner, but in the house when he closes the deal, we're going to cut to Sarah and just kind of stay with Sarah for a bit. We're going to see her living her day. We're going to see way less of the scene of Eddie Murphy at the bar getting the one couple to sign and then running into the other couple. So instead of those parts of the scene which we've now cut out, we're going to see Sarah at the restaurant where she's waiting for Eddie Murphy. Usually when you see that kind of scene in a movie, it's just so you can see the wife being sad or angry, but in this it's almost entirely the opposite. She's going to be kind of reading a book or even like playing Pac-Man or something. She's having fun by herself. Maybe she has a Game Boy since it's 2003. Having fun by herself. The waiter comes up and he's kind of feeling sorry for her, but she's just like, I can, it's fine. I expect my husband to be here, but if he's not, I'll be fine. I love to subvert a trope a little bit. We will see her wait a while, but we're very much getting across that she's used to this from him. She doesn't like it. She's not enjoying the fact that he didn't show up for their anniversary, but she's also used to it and able to enjoy herself without him. She's been stood up, she's fine. The audience is going, girl, leave him. We do get the scene where he comes back and apologizes to her. He still gives her gifts, and in my version of the scene, she's not so much giving the little almost silent treatment that she gave him in the movie, where she's just like, I forgive Teddy, with the implication being she doesn't forgive Eddie Murphy. Maybe because I really enjoy having characters communicate straightforwardly, but I would like to have her say some variation of, I can eat at a restaurant by myself and have a good time, but on our anniversary, when you invited me to dinner, I don't expect to have to. If you didn't want to celebrate our anniversary, you should have just told me. Eddie Murphy goes, I really wanted to take you out, but there was this couple and they wanted me to sell their house. Maybe we even get to pepper in a little bit of, my dad never took care of our family, so I really want to provide for the family and have a good work ethic, and that's my character baggage. And then Sarah in some way expresses something along the lines of, I understand that, but I want you to be able to choose me sometimes. We're setting it up for an easy callback later of like, I want you to choose me sometimes. Hey baby, I chose you this time. And then they have like a big kiss. I feel like the story should probably include Sarah having some flaw too, but I haven't thought of one for her, so right now she doesn't. Maybe in a future version of the story when I don't make this movie. The only one I could think of is the same one they did in Schmigadoon, where it's like, you want the perfect relationship, but that doesn't exist. And I don't think that fits very well here. We do get the scene where Eddie Murphy talks to the kids, and we do set up Michael's arachnophobia for later. We're gonna see more of the scene where Sarah talks on the phone with Ramsley before Eddie Murphy shows up, because again, she's getting character focused now, so we're gonna see more of her by herself, just kind of talking and doing her own thing. Same lead into them going to the mansion, same stuff happens when they get to the mansion, except again, we're cutting that old people joke, because my goodness. They have the flirty dinner, dinner with the rich ghost. In this one, Sarah's vibes with rich ghost are gonna be way more, oh man, are we becoming best friends right now because we both care so much about architecture, and less of her very flatly stating things about architecture and him being clearly enticed by it. In his mind, they're hitting it off romantically. In her mind, they're just, you know, talking about architecture, and she's so excited she gets to talk about architecture because Eddie Murphy doesn't really care about architecture in and of itself. He cares about what they can sell about a house. He's not really invested in the artistry of it, and we've established that in an earlier scene. Also at dinner, we're going to mention that the food looks beautiful and extravagant, but tastes awful. That's gonna come back later, remember that. There's still a weather reason to stay overnight, and the family still gets split up into their rooms in the same way. The fact that Eddie Murphy in this one isn't so much protagonist dad as like comedy dad makes it more reasonable that he manages to get lost by messing with stuff. Sarah is still gonna end up chatting with Rich Ghost because Butler contrives a situation where that happens. Maybe instead of being a footman, we're gonna make Inconceivable Ghost the Hatbox Ghost from the ride just for fan service. The fact that the ghosts are cursed and the nature of the curse is gonna be kind of different in this. First of all, the fact that everyone on the staff is trapped soul-wise is giving very much Beauty and the Beast, and as far as like, okay, one guy did something wrong and everybody on the staff is now cursed. I don't care for this hierarchical view of the afterlife, okay? This is very much a problem that's just between Elizabeth, Rich Ghost, and Butler Ghost. What I'm gonna say is the case is that Elizabeth died with unfinished business because she was still in love and still wanted to be with Rich Ghost. She cursed Butler Ghost because he killed her. Butler Ghost, out of spite, cursed everybody else because if his afterlife is going to be in this mansion with the lady he killed, he doesn't want to be alone in that, so he cursed everybody else. And naturally, the butler died before the rest of the staff did because, you know, he was older, so it makes sense that he was able to trap their souls here before they died. And maybe as a ghost, he killed all of them. I'm going to say the nature of the curse isn't just that it's keeping them from the afterlife, because the idea that like, oh, once the curse is lifted, they all get to go to heaven kind of ruins all franchise potential, and I mean, obviously, in the year of our Lord 2022, I understand not everything needs to be a franchise, but in the year of our Lord 2003, when Pirates of the Caribbean was getting sequels, I mean, Haunted Mansion maybe wanted to peek over and be like, hey, can I get a 2 on the end of that? No? Can't? Okay, that makes sense. Maybe, I'm just saying, maybe we don't want the mansion to be so unhaunted when it's over. But yeah, the nature of the curse is this now. As ghosts, they can't feel touch, and because they can't feel touch, they also can't taste or smell. And that's why the maid ghost cooking wasn't very good, because she's doing it all by sight. She doesn't know what it tastes like or smells like, so she's kind of like, this seems like the right amount of salt, right? A symptom of this is, oh, I feel hot on the coldest day of the year because I don't feel the air. I can't feel any breezes. I just feel hot all the time as a ghost. And that's gonna kind of add to the maid ghost defensiveness when Eddie Murphy says, maybe the chicken is why we're hallucinating. She's like, hey, it's not the chicken, because she used to be a really good cook when she was alive. So she's very sensitive about the fact that she's not anymore. It makes her kind of sad because she's like, no, I really valued that about myself and now I can't do it anymore. In my version, instead of cutting up the scene where Rich Ghost tells Sarah the whole backstory into like little intermittent fragments until she slowly learns the whole thing, I'm gonna have one uninterrupted scene where he tells her the whole backstory very quickly, and then that's done. She finds out that Rich Ghost believes she's Elizabeth way earlier in the movie, and also in my version, Rich Ghost is not dismayed when she denies it. He's not like, I expected you to remember after I told you, because in my version, Butler Ghost is better at manipulation, so he's just like, oh, she's probably not gonna remember until after you're married, so you may as well just marry her against her will, it's probably fine. So Rich Ghost is going into it like, it's fine if I marry you against your will, because you're gonna remember that you're in love with me afterward. He's gonna be played as way more delusional. He takes her panic and her attempts to flee very much in stride. He kind of pulls a Tate from American Horror Story Murder House in that he kind of just like appears around whenever she runs somewhere. So he's not chasing her, he just kind of appears wherever she runs to. She reacts to this with sheer determination, like, I'm gonna keep running, you can pop up wherever you want, I'm getting out of here with my family. That's just something you're gonna have to deal with. I don't know what you plan to do to me. Are you gonna kill me? No? Then I'm leaving. Well, she's not gonna say that because that would be stupid. That's the same thing I talked about Eddie Murphy for. Cut that out. He admires that she's like this, and also he thinks it's very hot. And he also thinks that they're flirting. He's approaching this whole thing like he's got all the time in the world. He's just enjoying hanging out with her while she actively runs from him, searching for her husband. Maybe we will let Sarah say a kind of stupid line in the vein of what Eddie Murphy's character said, and that she's gonna be like, this is all a moot point anyway, because you can't make me marry you, which is a stupid, you know, obviously that's a stupid thing to say. Whenever a character's like, you can't make me do this, I only have my loved ones at an undetermined location under your power, then obviously that's just like, ugh. Well, obviously they're gonna get held hostage, Sarah. It would be a terribly annoying thing for her to say, but I think at this point she's built up enough audience goodwill by being awesome that we're okay with her being a little bit annoying right now. She's like, you can't make me marry you. And Rich Ghost is like, oh yeah, Butler's working on that. He has not told Ramsley to kidnap the kids, but when Ramsley kidnaps the kids, he's not like, oh no, don't. Maybe he says something like, that feels a little extreme, but he doesn't scold him. He's just like, wow, that's a lot. Anyway, let's do this. The ending is gonna culminate very much the same, except that when Eddie Murphy gets thrown out, he is immediately and with no breaks going to stop at nothing to get back in. He's not gonna need a pep talk from Madame Leota. There's not gonna be an idle minute. He's pounding the door doesn't work. Okay, how about I grab this thing and break the door? That doesn't work. Okay, getting in my car, driving through the door. It worked. Like, that's gonna be the vibe instead. When Rich Ghost finds out that Butler Ghost killed Elizabeth, he's gonna fly into a rage. Like, he was mad in the movie. I want more mad. You're a yandere, man. Act like it. I want... He's gonna fly into a rage. This is gonna be the first time in the movie we see him upset also. In the real movie, there are a lot of moments where he's like, you must be Elizabeth, why don't you remember? And like, I don't want that. In my version, we've never seen him upset. He's been very chill this whole time. So when he's like, what, you killed Elizabeth? That's weird to see. It's like, oh man, this is no joke anymore. He's not playing around. When the whole climax dies down and Ramsley's defeated, Rich Ghost is gonna turn to Sarah and be like, oh, I'm really sorry. I thought you were Elizabeth. I thought that she was gonna come back to me if... And then he starts crying, and Sarah, not giving him a minute to like feel sorry for himself, she's gonna go ahead and collapse from the poison, because heaven forbid he have a minute to cry. I'm kidding, Sarah, go ahead and do your thing. So yeah, she collapses from the poison. Everyone gets to stress about that. In this, I'm thinking like something different saves her, because I still don't understand how being possessed by a ghost counteracts the effects of a poison. So maybe like in the trunk they found the letter from Elizabeth and also the antidote for a poison, and like Eddie Murphy just casually pocketed that and now he uses it. I don't know, there needs to be something else that saves her other than the ghost possession, but she does get possessed by the ghost afterward. Or, ooh, okay, maybe she gets possessed by Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, you know, inhabits her body, talks to Ramsley and stuff, and then while she's doing that, she's like, oh, by the way to counteract the poison is that thing you found earlier. And they're like, oh man, that thing? And she's like, yeah, anyway, I'm gonna leave the body now, whew. And she leaves the body, they give the antidote to the mom, mom's okay, ghost is back. Ooh, epic rap battle, Laura Croft versus Indiana Jones. I just got the notification, now you know what day I filmed this. Sarah's fine, Elizabeth's fine. Instead of all the ghosts going to heaven, they will be staying in the mansion. The breaking of the curse is just that they're no longer subject to those small indignities of ghosthood that I mentioned earlier. They still have unfinished business or whatever reason they had for inhabiting the mansion, and also a lot of them are worried about their afterlife prospects. Like, very specifically, it's going to be made explicit that the reason Rich Ghost and Elizabeth stay behind instead of moving on is because they're like, I don't know that we're going to the same afterlife, and we didn't get a chance to be in love when we were alive, so we're gonna go ahead and stick around here. Some of the servant ghosts are gonna decide to move on, but a lot of them are gonna be like, yeah, no, that's too much of a roll of the dice, so I'm gonna go ahead and stick around here where I know devil you know is better than devil you don't, and more literally in this case. Ooh, maybe Sarah's pregnant, and maybe she gives birth to someone who seems a lot like one of the ghosts, and it's like, oh, reincarnation happened. But I think what I specifically want to happen is Maid Ghost is gonna be like, I don't care which afterlife it is, I gotta get out of here. I've been living with my employers in this mansion that I was expected to clean for a century. That sucks. I'm leaving. I don't care which afterlife. I don't care if there isn't one. I gotta not be here. Maybe before she leaves, she even gets to just kind of yell at Rich Ghost like, hey, I hated working here. You don't treat your servants very well. I'm gonna be frank. This was bad for me. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't consider you a human. And she's like, yeah, I know. And then she, you know, pieces out. By the way, part of their ghosthood is like, oh yeah, no, your soul is tied specifically to this place. So like if you're gonna be a ghost, you have to be a ghost in this mansion. You can't be a ghost somewhere else. So it's either here or the afterlife, which is why they had to, which is why she had to leave. So basically some ghosts leave, some ghosts don't. We still have a haunted mansion when we're done. And Rich Ghost is still gonna be like, hey, you still wanna sell this house? Because you can. We're gonna still be here, but you can sell it. We'll keep quiet while you're selling it, and then we're gonna go ahead and do our own thing after you do. So basically he's gonna be pawning off the haunted mansion on some unsuspecting folk and setting up a sequel, which probably won't get made. Well, definitely won't get made, but like in the universe where this is the movie that got made in 2003, it still probably wouldn't have gotten a sequel, but I would have loved to rewatch it. Also, maybe right before they leave, there's a little bit of a hint that like Rich Dude would be absolutely down to clown with both Elizabeth and Sarah, and Elizabeth would also be cool with that. I'm sorry, I gotta stop, but like the little vampire was allowed to have a little swingers gag, so it'd be cool if Rich Ghost was like, hey Sarah, if you want to come back anytime. And Elizabeth's like, yeah. I'm not kidding. Anyway, have a great... This has been my thoughts about the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie. I enjoyed it a lot. It's very fun, it's very quotable. A lot of the concepts could have been built on a little differently, but anyone who has a problem with the movie... I've recorded 2 videos that I have not yet posted because they're both very loosey-goosey in terms of like what I actually do on this channel. So this was much closer to my actual content where it's like, oh yes, it's an Elf Likes Things video and it's a How I Would Rewrite. This is very much what I make. And then I have 2 videos filmed that are a little bit different, so I wanted to make this one first that's just like, okay, I still do the stuff I do, guys. Now for some other stuff. Be ready for the next videos to be a little different. It's okay. I think I'm probably gonna post one different one, then one back to form one, and then the other different one. But we'll see. Basically, the headline is there's a different one coming, and that's okay. Have a great day. Enjoy your assorted late year holidays. I wish my lipstick had matched my nails a little better, but I don't have this shade of... Actually, I probably do, is the sad thing. Oh well. But you know what? I think the fact that it didn't made this whole thing a little bit spookier, didn't it? Think on that for a minute. Drink some water, take a bath, and have a great day. In my hand is a pen that'll write a poem of me and you. The ink flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand right your way into his heart. Have I found everybody a fun assignment to do today? My job's to entertain, and it seems that soon enough it will be my job to reign over all that you see, over all that you know. As the king is slowly dying, any moment he could go. Yes, the king is slowly... Doggone it! How'd I get off pitch? How'd I get off? And I'm asking why, Lord.